Hello everybody and welcome back to another exciting edition of Boyographic, the show in which I, Matt the Gameboy, take you through the highs and lows of the Game Boy library, one cart at a time. As I am in Japan myself this week, we will be looking at another Japanese exclusive. It is Bishoujo Senshi Sailor Moon R. I distinctly remember a life without anime. As a kid in the early 90s, growing up in Britain, for cartoons there was Nickelodeon, whatever the BBC had syndicated in the way of Looney Tunes, and a block of early morning Disney cartoons with incredibly catchy theme tunes. Then there were the hand-me-down VHS cassettes from my brother and cousins, containing things like Transformers, Macron 1 and Cybots. Anything with big robots and power armor had me hooked. I didn't know why, but there was something very different about them, something cooler than the TV shows I was seeing day in, day out. Then, slowly, things like Ulysses 31 and Robotech ebbed their way into my life, right before Fox Kids decided to start airing Sailor Moon on British television. With it came the word anime, and my life changed forever. Suddenly I got it! These came from Japan! Just like the video games I loved. Soon I was being hit left, right and centre by Dragon Ball, Gundam and Escaflowne. The shelves of my local comic book store began to be filled with things called manga, and in alternate weeks I'd spend my pocket money on volumes of Gunsmith Cats and Lone Wolf and Cub when I wasn't buying any JRPG I could get my hands on. Even more surprising was when we realised that there were games of these anime series. That if you hooked your computer up to the internet, there were sites like coolroms.com and Cult of Kefka where you could download them. We'd use our hour of free nightly internet to download a 2.8 MB ROM of a game like Dragon Ball Z, Hyperdimension, and Bishoujo Senshi Sailor Moon R, then spend the rest of the night playing them on our Super Nintendo emulators. Ah, simpler times. But when I realised that a copy of Bishoujo Senshi Sailor Moon R was on the Game Boy, I rolled up my sleeves and had to dive in for nostalgia's sake. Unlike the Super Nintendo version of the game, the portable version isn't strictly a side-scrolling beat-em-up. Developed by Angel as opposed to Bandai, who worked on the home console version in-house, the game is, at its heart, an adventure game with side-scrolling segments that make up the core of the gameplay. However, when you say the words adventure and Japanese exclusive, at least my non-Japanese speaking brain deflates in disappointment. Sure, there is a translation of the game, but as a person who likes a physical cart in their hands, can I still enjoy this game, you ask? Well, you're in luck, as Angel has done something I've rarely seen and split the entire game up on the cartridge. What do you mean by that, Matt? Well, it's simple. The first option in the menu is a story mode, while the option on the top right allows you to simply play the platforming segments through as any Sailor Scout of your choice. Win! But Matt, I hear you cry, hardcore gamer, it drastically shrinks the length of the game, meaning you'll miss out on a rich story and minigames. Minigames! While I appreciate your enthusiasm, as a lapsed fan of the franchise, and again, playing this game on a cartridge, the story mode is incredibly inaccessible for someone who doesn't speak Japanese without a guide. Not to mention, by doing so, you're not getting the story anyways. I will admit that the character portraits do look amazing on the Game Boy, but it wasn't really fun for me without context, even with the nice little touches like the map and optional minigames. If I really wanted to fail at Japanese quizzes and slide puzzles, fortunately, that too can be done from the menu on the selection on the bottom right. If you're really desperate to see this game's ending though, even if you can't understand it, the game also has a password system on the bottom left of the menu, meaning you can skip out on all of the faff and jump right to the last level. Anyways, on to the bit that matters, the platforming! As previously mentioned, by selecting the top right option in the menu, you can easily access the pure platforming sections of the game. The first option is simply asking the player if you're a boy or a girl, with girl being easy mode and the boy being hard mode. Essentially, it comes down to deciding if you'd like a few less lives and a shorter life bar, which, in all honesty, is how you probably should play this game for it to be a little challenging. As you've already noticed, the game features very long and elegant sprite work, as seems to be the trend of games at the time aimed at young girls. These do admittedly slow the speed of the game down quite considerably, as there is some serious attention to detail paid in the characters' walk and attack cycles. But the game is straightforward enough that it's not really an issue. Your goal is simply to clear 5 levels, pressing A to jump and B to fire projectiles in self-defense against a whole host of enemies inspired by the TV show. At the end of each stage there's a boss with pretty simple patterns, though they do take enough hits to make it somewhat of a challenge. Dying in the game will fortunately see you simply restart the fight if this happens, as well as giving you unlimited options to continue. I could completely lambaste this game for being incredibly easy, but I don't think it's going to put off players too much. Instead, I'd rather take the time to say how great the way this game lays itself open actually is. First off, it's a game for kids, and that's reflected in the difficulty level. It is possible to die, and I did a few times on the game's bosses even, but it is incredibly beatable, something you rarely see in a Western licensed title aimed at the same age group. You can also decide, as I mentioned, whether you want the story or not, which is a function I bet a ton of gamers who rely on skip buttons wish was in most AAA titles today. And, as always, I'll thank Angel for putting in a password system, because this is a portable title without a battery save. If you're curious, be sure to check out Bishoujo Sensi's Sailor Moon R. The game looks great, and while the gameplay can be slow and easy, it's not too much of a hindrance to stop you enjoying playing it through a few times. Even more reason to pick this up might be the fact that you've got kids, as despite the initial language barrier, the difficulty level should be just right for younger gamers if you skip the story. Top it off with catchy chiptunes and an affordable price, and I'll think you'll find that just because it's a licensed title doesn't mean it's all bad. And that brings us to the end of another Boyographic, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed. If you have, please subscribe if you haven't already, share the channel around with those you think would be interesting, and check out some of our Boyographic videos where I do reviews like this of Game Boy games, as well as some more Boy Curious videos where I look at bootlegs and oddities for the system. Until I return in 2 weeks, folks, look after yourselves. You can find me on Twitter and my exploits in Japan at Gameboy, and Facebook and Instagram at the same place. But until then, be sure, Game Boys and girls, to game on.